All right. Well, thank you. Thank you all. Hello, everybody, and welcome. Thank you for joining me today. I hope everyone is enjoying the Literacy Symposium. There are so many fabulous presenters and topics to choose from. I am so honored that you are all taking your time to spend some time with me this afternoon and right after lunch. I hope to share with you some instructional practices and resources that you can implement in your classrooms and share with your colleagues. So I have to preface this session a little bit. So this session started as a series of small 30-minute virtual professional learning sessions that we call bite-sized PD that my team and I put together really for teachers. So I work at the Capital Area Intermediate Unit, and I'm the training and consultation supervisor that oversees a team of consultants. And we go out into the schools and provide professional development, training, consultative services. And in the past few years, getting teachers to come to the IU is getting harder. There's, lack of um, a teacher shortage and lack of subs, and districts aren't approving as many to come on out. So we needed to figure out ways that we can bring the learning to you. And so we put together these 30-minute before school 8 to 8:30 sessions that occur right now about once a month, and package them around some sort of similar topic. The one that I'm sharing with you today is based in that. It's where it started, and it's just parts of it. At the end of this presentation, if you're interested in more, I have much more to share. And this session, we started with Know Better, Do Better. And that's what we call all of our sessions. But this one really was about here's some practices that we are seeing out in the field that we're hearing from teachers that they're learning and saying, hey, maybe I should be doing something different. And so we're saying, here's a strategy that common practice that's happening in the classroom. And here's why it's happening. Here's what the research really says about that. And here's what maybe you can do instead. So I plan on sharing what are some of those things that are happening that maybe you want to stop, and here's some things that you can start doing. So I hope when you leave today, you have a wealth of resources that you can pull from. All right, so learning intentions, here's really where I'm going to focus our time over this next hour and discuss some of these common literacy practices. So things like guess the cover word, various different spelling activities like word boxes and rainbow words, memorizing sight words and practicing nonsense words. Those are going to be the four that I focus in on today and share what is the intended purpose? Why are teachers using these? What is the problem? What does research say? And what are some evidence-based practices that we can do instead? So it's time to clean out our instructional practice closet. And you'll keep seeing that throughout the presentation. So we're going to start with guess the covered word. This is an oldie but a goodie. So this, if you're not familiar with this, it is a common classroom practice that involves students making guesses about a word. Usually that word, it's in a sentence or in some sort of text. The word is covered up or it's blacked out in some manner. And then students are prompted to read the sentence and come to that covered up word and guess, what could that word be? What would make sense in this sentence? And the word sometimes is slowly uncovered letter by letter. Sometimes students are directed, well, let's look at the picture and see if maybe that helps us figure it out. So the image that you see on the screen, this is one that I just stole off the internet on Googling like how to play guess the covered words, and here's one that pops up. Very similar if you go out there and look, there's all kinds, but they all have that similar, here's a word, it's covered, let's make a guess, what would make sense here? And then the steps after that may change, maybe variable, but this one is, all right, let's check our guess. Does it sound right? Let's write the word and cover the word. Are we right? Keep reading or we try again. Right. So all about making guesses. I mean, it's in the title of it, guess the covered word. So this is what it might look like. This is my, somewhat example here of what a student might see. So here's our sentence. I ate some of the blank. And I can see the entire word is covered except for the first letter, R. So I know the word has to start with an R. I also know from reading the sentence that this word has to be something you can eat. So I can start making some guesses. I know it can't be things like rocks or rope or river, but what could it be? So maybe I ate some of the raspberries or radishes, maybe ribs or roast, right? What else could it be? The number of infinite number of things that we could put in here. Rhubarb, rum cake, all kinds of things. It could be one of these many options. And students are really just taking a stab in the dark, right? And trying to guess what the covered word, what that correct word really is. And they're relying on context to figure it out. And they might get it right, and then again, they might not. So if this word is rhubarb, I didn't get it right with all of these. And I could probably, if I'm an 8-year-old, keep guessing all day long and probably not come to the right answer if it's rhubarb. So why are teachers using this common practice? Well, as I kind of mentioned already, we're teaching context clues, and educators teach context clues by showing the student what to do when they come to a word that they don't know. They'll say, well, let's think about what makes sense in this sentence. Let's think about what all the words are around it. Well, this teaches students to guess at difficult words and make their guesses based on meaning, or maybe looking at that first letter, or sometimes even the length of the word they're using. So you might see a covered word is a long covered up word and a large box is covering it, or maybe the short words have a small box on it. So we can think about, well, it's a long word like caterpillar, or it's a short word like, cat. So this practice is helping students to develop the ability to think about what makes sense in a sentence. That's the purpose of what teachers are trying to get at with this. But here's the problem. So first of all, that might not sound that bad when you first think about it, but it is very problematic. By using this practice, we are actually encouraging students to guess at words. I mean, like I said, it's in the title of it. That's what we want. We're encouraging to guess. We're encouraging them to rely on context as their first go at a word. Using context clues requires other knowledge. So if that word was rhubarb, and I have never, ever heard of the word rhubarb or seen it or tasted it. I am very probably not too likely that I am going to get that correct guess. So no matter how hard I try, no matter how much I rely on context. By guessing at words, reading is really slowed down and students are pausing to really make that guess, that stab in the dark as to what it is. Overall, the strategy might give the appearance of a student reading, especially if they guess it correctly, instead of the skills that they really need to decode and attack those words. So, in doing so, we are teaching poor reading habits to students when they come to words. That's not what we want them to do when they come to a word that they are unfamiliar with. We want them to figure out the word and read through that word and use our decoding skills. And when we go right to guessing, and relying on context, this is a habit that's going to be very hard to break. And if you've had students that have been taught this early on, and you've worked with fourth and fifth graders, even higher than that, you'll know that it's a very hard strategy to break them of. Um, Struggling readers, especially, this is going to be very difficult. This is something that because they don't have adequate decoding skills, they're already doing this. So we need to focus on those decoding skills to make sure when we try to figure out that word. So let's look at the research that is supporting what I'm saying. When we think about skilled word recognition, context is not required to figure the actual word out. Guessing from context is simply just not as efficient as using phonic decoding. Like I said, we can make guess after guess after guess after guess. If we use our decoding skills, we can get right to what that word is. And also, as I mentioned, it is a strategy that poor readers rely on because they're not often skilled at word recognition. Another problem with contextual guessing is that it does not promote sight word learning. And then finally, sometimes it is thought that if a student reads a word incorrectly, but it makes sense in the sentence, that this is a good thing. Well, it seems to make sense that it would be, but in fact, semantic errors, those meaning errors, are not really a sign of better reading development. So here's my example if you think about it this way. If a student was reading a sentence and it is the girl rode the blank, they come to that word in that blank, and let's say there's a picture that even supports this text, and the picture is of a girl riding a horse. And so the student might say, the girl rode the horse. Well, if the word is actually pony, you might say, well, at least it made sense to that student and it matched the picture. A horse and a pony, they look the same, right? But it's actually telling the teacher that the student isn't even attacking the word at all. They didn't even get to that first letter sound and applying their letter sound knowledge. So a semantic error is not a sign of better reading development. It's a sign that we're compensating and, again, just making guesses at what the word could be. Horse and pony start with completely letter sounds, completely different ones. So using context can be very problematic. Louise Spear Swirling says that, and I really like this quote, that even when children are able to use context to arrive at the correct word, reliance on context to compensate for inaccurate or non-automatic word reading creates a drain on comprehension. And this kind of compensation becomes increasingly problematic as children are expected to read more challenging texts that have fewer no pictures, sophisticated vocabulary, and grammatically complex sentences. So let's look at this sentence. The grocery store mailed the weekly blank to their customers. So think, what do you think that could be? Could it be coupons? If we're using context, the grocery store mailed the weekly coupons, the weekly advertisement, maybe flyer, right? All of those might make sense in that sentence. But I can tell you, none of those words are correct. Context is not helping us identify the correct word. So the word that we wanted is circular. The grocery store mailed the weekly circular to their customers. Well, now we look at that word and let's say we could read that word, but we don't understand what that word is. Now, this is where context can come into play, not to figure out the actual word, but to understand the word, understand the meaning, understand using it for comprehension purposes. So is using context always bad? Well, no, not necessarily, but it's not going to help us with word recognition. It's going to help us with comprehension. So it's okay to use context when the students can read the words, but maybe they don't know the meaning. So here, circular, if they only know the word circular is a circle, this might be confusing to them, right? They might think, well, why is the grocery store mailing us circles, right? So it's going to help us think about that in a different way. It's good for multiple meaning words, but most importantly, it's going to require direct instruction and vocabulary to go with it. So context does not help word recognition, but it can help with comprehension. So let's clean out the closet. What can we do? First thing we can do is explicitly teach the decoding skills following a logical scope and sequence. Number one thing that we need. So if we don't have that, we need to work on getting that into place. And then practice those skills and practice them with decodable text to help reinforce that taught skill. Then we can also follow these prompts. Instead of doing the guess the covered word as a strategy, we can tell students, look through the whole word, sound out that word, blend the sounds together fast. Then you see number 4, then after we've read the word and decoded through that word, now we can check, does that make sense in the sentence? That's where context comes to play. So after I talk about each of these common practices, I'm going to come back to this screen of resources. This is just a few, and within every one of these, there's a ton more to explore. So in the handouts, all of these are linked, so you'll be able to link right to the sites and see them all for yourself. But I'll pick out a few each time to kind of talk through here. So the first one I want to point to is this one right here. This is from Dr. Pam Kastner. And if you know Dr. Kastner, she loves her wakelets, and she has many, 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 many collections of wakelets filled with resources. The one that I picked out for us today is the collection that has decoding prompts and bookmarks. Now I'm going to click on this, but Sherry and Lisa, we didn't practice this, so I don't know if I'm going to have to do a reshare of the screen. So let me know if you can see it.
No, you
No.
might have to reshare.
Okay. Let's do. How's that?
Yep.
There we go. All
I
right.
see it.
So I'll do this with some of them, but I won't do it with all because that might take a long time. So this one is a great wakelet that she put together, filled with decoding prompts and bookmarks. So you could use, I shared with you some steps when you come to words that they don't know, that they can go through. But this is one that she pulled together from many other resources, decoding prompts posters, uh, how to read a new word, some different articles that are in here, different prompts, lots and lots and lots and lots. It keeps going and going. And uh, Pam is often like adding things to any of her wakelets. So you'll have a lot if you bookmark these that you can access many times for a very long time and keep getting new things. All right. So let me go back to our presentation here. Mhm. All right, how's that?
Looks good.
Perfect. All right, thank you. So that's this one right here. The next two, I'm not going to click on. Many people are familiar with these, but if you are not, Florida Center for Reading Research is a wonderful site. I direct people to this all the time. Often I have, teachers using things from Teachers Pay Teachers and spending lots of money. This is free, and there are tons and tons of things in there to pull from. So this one is focused on instructional routines. And then this one is student center activities. And many, 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 many binders and binders of filled of student center activities that you can pull from that you could do instead. Another really good one here is from UFly. And when you go to this site, you can go to the toolbox, and they have tons of lessons, decodable passages. If you use the program, There's PowerPoints, there's activities, but you can also pull from there if you don't use the UFly program. And then this one up here at the top is also a really good one. I mentioned decodable text. This is the Reading League's list of decodable text resources. So you can see some recommended ones that you can go to for I'd say all of them are for purchase. Okay, we'll come back to some of these other ones in a little bit here. All right, so the next one I'm going to tackle is some spelling activities. I'm going to focus in on two specific spelling activities. This first one is called word boxes, or Lynn Stone calls them word coffins. So that's why you see the coffin up there. This is a common classroom practice that has students try to figure out the word based on the shape of the letters in the word. And so students are prompted to think about the visual aspects of that whole word and are encouraged then to read the whole word. So in this image, you can see the words can, get, and look. And let's see if we can figure out which word goes in this first box here. Well, when I look at my top words, I can see that here there's a tall box, there's two small boxes, and another tall box. Well, when I look at my words, I have a word here that has a tall letter, two small letters, and another tall letter. So this word must fit in each of these boxes, and then I could write them in. So it seems like L-O-O-K would fit in there, right? And we didn't even have to read that word and know that the word is look to be able to do this activity. We just have to match and say, is it a tall letter or a short letter? Don't even need to read. So they just need to look at the visual aspects and determine if it fits in the boxes. Here's another one. This is my favorite. When I say favorite, it drives me insane. And this is rainbow words. So rainbow words or rainbow writing is a very common classroom practice. I have 5 kids and I think they've all done some rainbow writing in their life. And this is where students write the word several times in different colors and make that rainbow effect. It's an activity that we often see as spelling homework or within like a spelling or literacy center. So students are encouraged to practice and memorize the whole word. They practice writing it over and over and over again in different colors. So the purpose. Teachers mean well with these spelling activities, and I'll share a little bit here soon, but I've done these too, so I get it. What they're trying to do is have students really consolidate what they have been taught about the spelling of words, and then try to reach a point of automaticity and fluency, and just giving them lots and lots of practice opportunities. So it's thought that if students then learn these spelling words by practicing them in these fun ways, then hopefully they'll apply them in their writing. So the image that you see here on the screen are just some other popular ones that I pulled off the internet. This one is like a secret code spelling. This one is like make it like a boat, spelling boats. Here's writing backwards, spelling with stampers, all kinds of spelling activities like that that just have them practicing memorizing and writing spelling words. So the problem with these activities is that they encourage memorization and they really do very little to help the student actually understand the meaning of the word or the phonemic and morphemic structures of the word. This type of instruction is not explicit, it's not systematic, and it's not direct. And ultimately, it has a temporary effect, kind of like cramming. So we've all been there, right? Like in high school or college, you had to cram for an exam, you study, study, study the facts, take the test, and the next day, poof, it's gone, right? This type of activity does the same thing for students. These activities instill poor habits in typically developing children, and then they actually risk the progress of students with learning difficulties. So as I said, I've done this, right? Confession. These were activities that I have used before that I knew better. I remember my class of elementary learning support students, and I would develop spelling centers very similar to these, all kinds of fun activities because I thought, well, they had to enjoy and have fun doing it, and these were all different ways that they liked, right? We do rainbow words, Play-Doh, stencils, stickers, you name it. We turned it into a spelling word. And oh, and then on my wall, there were word walls with lovely shaped coffins as well. So it's what I knew at the time, and I thought I was helping my struggling
Phew.
learners. But now, I know better. So different activities. So Stanislas Dehaene shares some other things to kind of support that I pulled from his research. He explains that phonics is superior to whole word reading. And what he means by this is that we use our decoding skills and then we can apply them to read words. However, if we are whole word reading, we're just memorizing. So the knowledge of our code allows for an infinite number of combinations that we can read these words. If we're just memorizing, we just have this like set. And some people can memorize it really good at memorizing, but you cannot memorize every single word that is out there. When the brain reads words, it processes through every letter. It does not consider the word's global shape. Those word coffins that we see aren't helping the brain to read anything. Novice readers read letter by letter. We even do that when we come to a new word that we've never encountered. We attack it and start sounding it out letter by letter. But as the novice reader's skills start to increase and they become better with their decoding skills, the reading becomes more automatic. So now we have this illusion that we're whole word reading. It appears that when we read words, we're reading it whole word by whole word. But in fact, our brains have processed through these letters and orthographically mapped those words in our brain. So let's clean out the closet. And we first need to think about, again, systematic, explicit, direct teaching, focused in on those spelling patterns, matching that with our good scope and sequence that we talked about with the last practice. We can use dictation, having students dictating words, phrases, sentences to students, and having them apply those into writing. Build in retrieval practice, short, frequent, all throughout the year. So we keep coming back and keep coming back. So we take away that cramming effect. Consider utilizing spelling pattern drills and then strategies such as phoneme grapheme mapping. And you're going to hear that one a lot today, phoneme grapheme mapping. So if we take a look at the resources that we can try here, let me point out a few here that I think are worth taking a look at that kind of supports this one. So really great reading. This one has, if you go to this site, tons of things here. You can access their programs, tools, activities, letter tiles. They even have professional development. That's a really good one to take a look at. And then down here at the end is a phoneme grapheme mapping template and sample lesson. So this comes from the book Phoneme Grapheme Mapping, phoneme grapheme mapping, yeah. It is a sample from the book, so you get a taste of what it is. I will warn you, I mean, it's an excellent, excellent, excellent book, but don't go on to like Amazon and try to buy it. If you go to really great reading, it costs, I think, like $55. Whereas if you go to Amazon, I've seen it like 100 or so. So that's one definitely to check out, especially if you're new to phoneme grapheme mapping. Phonics and spelling through phoneme grapheme mapping. That's what it is. Um, it has a whole book that you can follow with how each lesson on doing phoneme grapheme mapping. But you don't need that book to be able to do phoneme grapheme mapping. The one that I do want to show you here that I'll have to change my share then is from Newhouse Tools. And they have tons there that we can take a look at, but I'm going to focus on one in particular. All right, so Newhouse Tools, if you go to that link, lots of things here to take a look at. I'm going to go to the Rapid Recognition Chart Generator. And it'll scroll down to there. And then what you'll do is you'll click on this link and it'll take you to an Excel document that you'll have to open up. And I probably will need to do a All right, when you get to the rapid recognition chart generator, this is really cool. There's the instructions. If you look at the bottom, you have a tab that says words. So you could focus on whatever your spelling pattern. You can do this with letters. You can do this with high frequency words if you want. So let's say we were doing all short A words. So I'll do like cat and man and bag and uh, dad, Matt, and tag. That was really bad off the top of my head. But here, this is what's cool that you go to chart one. It takes all those words and creates a speed drill for you. And then you can go to chart two and it mixes them up, chart three, chart four, chart five. So pretty cool tool that you can just create your own speed drills. Like I said, you can do this with letters, you can do this with syllables, you can do this with words, whatever you like to put in there. That's one of my favorite ones to highlight. Right. And all right, now I think I'm mixed up. What are you seeing now?
We're seeing your slideshow, um, but not in presentation mode.
Okay. Do this again. I'm sorry.
No worries. It's all good. There you
How's
go.
that? There
Yeah.
we go. All right. My goodness. Okay, so next we're going to take a look at sight word memorization. So this is a common literacy practice where simply memorizing sight words. And I'm going to put that in quotes because that term is used very loosely, right? It means a lot of different things to people. So sometimes it's referred to those words that we need to memorize, that we have to know by heart. Sometimes people are talking about high frequency words. Sometimes it's outlaw words, red words, all kinds of different ways that people call these sight words, many different names. What people are doing though is using this practice as an activity to have students identify words on like a word ring or maybe in a word story. They may incorporate some of those spelling activities that we discussed, such as rainbow words or word boxes, to help students learn the words and recognize them by sight. Really, the ultimate goal that they're trying to get at is to transfer the ability to read these words in text. So purpose, teachers use these techniques to help students achieve automaticity and fluency in reading high frequency words or whatever words that they want them to memorize by providing these practice opportunities. And they also believe that they are helping students to learn to spell the words and apply them in their writing often. A major problem is that these activities are encouraging students to memorize words. They often, often creates difficulties for students when they're identifying words that outside of the context of the word ring or that activity. So high frequency words or these sight words, they may sometimes be on lists. And within those lists, many of them are even decodable and really don't even need to be memorized. So even words that have some irregularities, such as the word said, SAID, has parts of it that can be decodable. So sight word memorization is another practice with a temporary effect similar to cramming. It's another strategy that I used with my students, confession. All of my students had word rings, and I thought I was differentiating for each one because they had different words depending on which words they knew and which ones they didn't. And once they could read the word multiple times, I did like a punch every time they read it, like a hole punch. And then if they got it after so many times, like 10 times, right, then it was moved from the ring. And it was like a big deal because they knew that word. But the problem I often noticed, and it really baffled me at the time, was when they had these words in text, they couldn't read them, but they could read them on the ring and had no clue that it was the exact same word. So Linnea Airy shares that words are more efficiently stored when phonological connections are made. Orthographic information about the word is stored in the brain. A mental process called orthographic mapping comes into play. And this process is one that readers use to store words so they can be retrieved immediately, effortlessly. It's how readers can turn an unfamiliar word into a familiar one and instantaneously read that word as if by sight. So, in order to orthographically map words in the brain, students really must know the letter sound correspondences and be able to blend and segment those sounds. So, cleaning out the closet time, let's get the word rings out of the closet and instead explicitly teach the phoneme grapheme relationships. Focus on phoneme segmentation and blending and teach decoding skills that are necessary to sound and blend out those words. We can use strategies such as tap it, map it, zap it, or tap it, map it, graph it. These are great instructional practices. These require students to, tap the sounds out and then map them, add either write them down, or often you'll see with Map It that they pull magnetic letters or some sort of letter tiles to match that sound with the grapheme, and then blend it together. And the zap it part, if you've never seen tap it, map it, zap it, um, is often done with like bingo chips. And so we'll map it with a chip and then zap it is take the bingo one that's magnetic and zap it across to take the chips up. Kids love that one. Tap it, map it, graph it is the same concept, but then you write it, the graph part. Phoneme graphing mapping, again, shows up here. Phoneme graphing mapping is such a great strategy that if you're not already using that one, I cannot say enough about using that strategy in your classroom. Also, something that is familiar with a lot of people, it's got a lot of traction over the past few years, is a heart word routine. And really, whether you use the heart word routine or something similar, focusing in on the parts of the word that are regular and parts that are not regular. So in the word said, like I mentioned earlier, the S and the D are regular parts of that word. So students can already decode those parts. There's only a part in the middle that they would have to really think about, or in the heart word routine is, know by heart. And so some resources that connect with that one. Really great reading does have some information and short little videos on here about heart word magic that you can go to. Read Stirs, this connects to the article, A New Model for Teaching High Frequency Words. It's a great article that if you're new to um, looking and thinking about the words in this way, that you can go through, and they kind of even give you some suggestions on different words. Let's see. And Some of the ones that I've already mentioned as well can fit in there nicely, like the phoneme grapheme mapping, lots of things in the new house tools. Devin Kearns also has a site called Finder. And in this one, let me pull this one up. In this site, if you wanted to say, all right, I'm going to pick the grapheme A, and I want all the words that have A with a long A, then I can search for words and it's going to give me a list of long A words. So you can do multiple patterns. You can also do an advanced setting. You can change to syllables. So this is a good resource too that can help you to develop some of those word lists yourself and focus in on some of those patterns that you might want. All right. And there we go. All right, last one. Last practice is nonsense word practice. So this is a common practice that often includes lists of nonsense words for students to read, often during centers or for homework. So you might see this as some sort of nonsense word game. Students practice reading nonsense words as whole blended words. And so the image to the right is an example I found online called Roll It, Read It. Students roll a die, and depending on the number they roll, they read the row of nonsense words for that number. Lots of ways that you might see this one. Teachers typically use this strategy because they want to help their students perform better on the nonsense word fluency assessment. And that's, used during universal screening and benchmarking, progress monitoring. So they think, well, hey, if we want to improve our progress monitoring, let's do some of these activities. So the intent is for students to become more fluent and automatic with the reading their VC and CVC words. And you can see some variations of what that might look like. There's nonsense word bingo, nonsense word go fish, color the gumball, things like that. So to think about this problem, you really have to understand what is the purpose of nonsense word fluency assessments. Nonsense word fluency assessments are used to determine if students are truly developing the decoding skills and not just memorizing the words. So if we teach nonsense words as nonsense words, we're really decreasing that validity of the nonsense word assessment when we administer it as a benchmark or progress monitoring. We don't want students to memorize these nonsense words, and that's ultimately what we're guiding them to. If we do that, then how are we going to know if they really have the decoding skills? So the time is better spent on having students practice reading words with that focus pattern. We can use some nonsense word built into the instruction, but we're using it as an assessing purposes. So why do we use nonsense word? I kind of started to allude to some of this, but first, David Kilpatrick shared that nonsense word reading tasks estimate a student's phonics skills. So when it's used for spelling, they can assess if a student has the letter sound knowledge and phoneme awareness. So it is something we want to use, but like I said, for assessment purposes. Here's some research that Kaminsky and Good had shared. And just to describe what these things are, alphabetic principle, blending, and basic phonics, because they all play into understanding nonsense words and the activities that go with that. So alphabetic principle is that knowledge of letter sound correspondences and the understanding that these letters represent sounds in spoken words. Blending, also known as phonological recoding, is using the alphabetic principle to decode and read unknown words. And then basic phonics is knowing the letter sound correspondences and applying them to decode words. So if nonsense words are so bad, right? And then why not just use real words all the time? Well, a student might already be able to read that real word. They may have memorized that word. We might not know for sure if they know those letter sound correspondences when they read it. So you take a word like cat, C-A-T, they've probably seen that word since before they really could read, right? This is probably one that they saw when they were 3, 4 years old and have really memorized at this point, which is fine. But if we have a word like that, then we don't know if they really know those letter sounds. So we take a word like fid, and now we can assess if the student knows those letter sound correspondences and they can blend it together. So we don't want to teach nonsense words. We don't want to flood students with these nonsense word activities. Another one that I didn't share, but I remember from a classroom is they would have a nonsense word written on a card or on a cutout of a hand on the wall, and kids would slap it as they walk out the door and say that nonsense word. Those type of things are just having students work on memorizing those nonsense words instead of really thinking about what are those letter sounds. So use them to assess, but we can get rid of all those activities that just have them reading and reading and reading nonsense words. So cleaning out the closet, what can we do? Here are a few really great strategies to do instead. You may be familiar with many of these, and if you haven't tried some of these, I highly recommend things like word building and word chains, doing some blending routines, some blending drills, and of course, there's that phoneme grapheme mapping I talked about. Um, Always a good one. And if we come back to our resources, these last few, I'm not going to click on those. Those are all videos. I wasn't going to share them and watch them anyway, but they're videos on sound by sound blending, continuous blending, and this is one on word chaining. A lot of these strategies that I've talked about today are all throughout all of these different resources. As you've seen with some of them, you can go in and there's a lot to explore. So I encourage you to check those out and explore and explore and explore. So many wonderful things in here that you can pull from. Now, the last thing that I'm going to share that we've cleaned out our closet. Those 4 strategies, those 4 practices were 4 of 8. So I mentioned in the beginning that we um, did this as a series of 30-minute sessions. You can access all 8 of those sessions through this link. It will take you to a s'more that has all 8 videos, 30 minutes or less, of myself and others on my team presenting these with teachers. And other ones that we did, here's the 4 that we covered today. There's also one on vocabulary packets. One we talk about word walls. One we talk about independent reading activities, and then one about buddy reading. So lots more out there, and each one of these are filled with resources as well. So I encourage you to take that, share that with your colleagues. We've had many that have attended and use these as professional development as well in their schools. And then also bonus for being here today. There are more. So we have continued our Know Better, Do Better sessions. This one will take you to a link, a series of 3 that we put together all about small group instruction. This one will take you to a link called Know Better, Do Even Better, where we took 3 strategies that are good and how do we make them even better. For example, taking phonemic awareness instruction and adding letters to it. That's one of them that's in there. The next one is a 3-part series on writing that you can check out. And then this last one is in the works right now. And I invite you, if you wanted to attend, This takes you to a link of how you can register on our IU's registration system. We're doing a series in the fall of instructional routines. Um, if you attend and if you register and you can't attend, you'll be one of the first at the end of the series that would get this live. So if you would like to check it out and you're available at 8 to 8:30 on those dates, great, you can join us. If not, you'll get the videos anyway. And then we will have more in the winter and also in the spring. We're already working on what those might be. So, all right. I think that brings me to the end. Lots of things to share that I shared with you today. So I hope you really found something that you can take back and use in your classrooms or share with your colleagues.